have about 30-year background, maybe most longer, of grounding communication systems, whether it's satellite systems or head-ins for cable television or low-power television or television. But everything has to be grounded in order to keep the noise down and so that you can have good, clean sound and good, clean data, good, clean pictures. It's a real art. It's not something most people in the world ever think about. The only people that are really familiar with it are people in communications or the sensitive electronics. It's second nature to me. I see everything from an electrical point of view because everything in our environment is electrical. Every time you take a step in a house, if you are walking on a carpet or a shoe with a dissimilar fabric, then you're creating static charges on your body every step you take. You don't feel it unless it's over 3,000 or 4,000 volts. If you touch a doorknob, you'll see that spark and sometimes you'll feel it. Everything in our environment is electrical or charged. The computer came along in the early 80s, or a little bit before. You had to have better ground because anything could glitch data. A glitch could create a little static charge, and if you touch a computer, it'll glitch up and you have to shut it down, bring it back up, and so on. Because back then, nothing was grounded. Computers weren't grounded anything. When I was about 50, I developed a compromised situation with my liver from an abscess that I ended up from a dental infection in the tooth. I did survive. They cut out about 5/6 of my liver on the main lobe, which didn't leave much resources left. It took me about 6 months to be able to walk a mile because I had to walk a few more steps every day. But within 6 months, my liver grew back 100% in size. When I went through that experience, I didn't know anything about grounding the human body. It didn't even occur to me. But through that process, recovering, I woke up one morning and I noticed everything in my environment was more vibrant, colorful, more electrical. I looked around my bedroom and I had all this beautiful art and all these things that I'd collected forever. I realized that I almost died, and that if I had died, all this stuff, what would have happened? I spent my whole life collecting nice art, and the only person that knew its real value was me because I was the one who placed the value or that bought it and created a home for it and then forever took care of it. So my life was about taking care of all of my possessions. And so I had this little epiphany where I just had to get rid of everything I owned because my life was about taking care of those things. I wanted to experience something greater in life, something whatever. I didn't know at that time, but I was just happy to be alive. I wanted my freedom back, and I wanted to be like that young boy out in the pasture. No responsibility other than just babysitting some cows or something. I ended up selling my home, everything. I gave everything away except for, I think I took 2.5 suitcases of clothing, bought a small RV, and I spent 4 years traveling around the United States living in national parks. I loved it. A lot of fun, a lot of great people out there. Then all of a sudden I was getting bored with that, so I needed to go back and do something. But I didn't want to make my life about money. I wanted to make my life about doing something I felt good about. I wanted to be able, the next time I die, be able to feel like I was worth being here, something other than chasing the buck. I spent those 4 years running around, and then one night I was down in Key Largo, Florida, on the bayside, watching the sunset. It's always beautiful down there. And I had this feeling come over me that I needed to go back west and go to work and do some things. I packed everything up and left, but I had this very earthy feeling. I didn't understand it. So I went back west to LA area, and then I didn't want to stay there, so I went to Phoenix, Tucson, and that wasn't feeling good. So I decided I would go up to Flagstaff because that's more like Montana, where I'm from, snow and cold and pine trees. On the way up, it was getting late, and I saw a little RV sign, so I pulled into a little town called Sedona, Arizona. And it was full, and it was dark. So you wait and pay in the morning at the RV park. I parked, went to sleep, woke up in the morning, looked outdoors, and I said, I'm not leaving here. This is like living in a national park because you have the red rocks, and then it's full of art galleries, and I love art. Wow, this is pretty neat. So I spent about 2 years there. And in the process, I got involved with some of the local art galleries, helping them to light their art and present their art better and so on. I didn't have any money to pay you. It was just something fun to do. One day I was ordering some parts for a light show at one of the nice galleries there, and my computer kept glitching. It kept going down, and it was just frustrating. So I realized it was static electricity, so I ran a piece of copper tape across my desk and connected it to a ground. So every time I would touch my computer, before I would touch it, I put my fingers on the tape, ground the static electricity on my body, then I could go and put my orders in and do whatever, everything was fine. After that, I went outdoors, and anybody familiar with the area, this is across from Tlaquepaque, a little tourist area. When I sat on a bench, up pulls a big tour bus. And in this tour bus was a group of Japanese tourists. They were a little shorter in stature, but you could tell they were a tour group. I noticed that their shoes, they all had white Nike-type tennis shoes on. intuitively, I ask if there's a consequence of humans wearing these rubber sole shoes, because when I was a kid, we were always barefoot, or we wore a leather shoe for school or church or whatever, but you didn't wear shoes hardly at all. It was during the summer or at home. And then it was about 1960 when they reinvented plastics, polymers, the first thing we did. And that's only 65 years ago. And I've been working on this project for 25 years ago. So at the time I asked the question, it was 40 years into shoes. And I didn't know, I had no idea, because I had static and the computer events. So I went home at night, I grabbed a voltmeter and I grounded it to the earth, just cut a long wire, and started walking around my house and measuring the difference in the charges on my body compared to when I'm standing barefoot on the earth. I'm equal with the earth, there's no charge. But when I put shoes on, immediately my body becomes an antenna, and I attract all of this static and all of this electrical noise that's in our living environments. You live in a sea of electrical noise. We all do. And I'm not saying it's harmful. I don't think for the most part it is by itself. What's harmful, I've learned, is not being grounded. That night, I took a roll of 3-inch wide metal duct tape like you would use on furnaces. And I laid it across my bed and I connected it to a ground rod, threw it out the window, and then I connected another one to a meter, threw it out the window, and then I would lay on the duct tape and all the noise would disappear. My body voltage isn't static, and anything on my body would drop to zero. So I knew I was grounded. I knew I was at Earth potential. The thing that's interesting about that, I was at that time maybe 54, and I had a hard time sleeping because I had skied for 30 years. I had blown out everything you could, play tennis, and I was cat washed. And anything that you could do, that you could rough yourself up, that's my life. So I had a lot of pain and a lot of issues, and it was very challenging for me to sleep. And I usually left the TV on late at night so I could entertain myself while I was falling asleep. I was playing with the meter, and then all of a sudden it was the next morning, and I thought, wow, there's something going on here because I don't sleep. And so I played with it a little bit and slept grounded for a couple, 3 days. And then I thought, wow, this is interesting, and it works. So I said, I'm surprised nobody told me about this because I've been taking painkillers and stuff forever. So I ran into a couple of friends of mine and I told them about it. And I said, you guys got to try this because nobody sleeps. Hardly anybody sleeps, especially when you get older. So I grounded both of them. One of the wives got pretty upset because I messed up a sheet, or we messed up a sheet, whatever. But anyhow, both of them had a similar experience, but one of them come over and said, do you think this could have anything to do with my arthritis? My arthritis pain has dropped significantly. And I said, no, I don't think so. I think it's about just sleep. Then all of a sudden I realized my chronic pain had diminished significantly. And I said, well, there's something really going on here. Back then, all we had was AOL. I looked there and found nothing on static or health or anything. And then I went to Nexus Lexus, started downloading data, and couldn't really find anything other than, I think it was in the 1950s, they realized that when they were doing open heart surgery, that a lot of people were dying and they didn't know why, and it was because of static charges. They didn't think about static electricity back then. We didn't have a lot of plastics and stuff. They have to ground patients before they can open up the chest because you don't want static electricity leaking in and creating a cardio event. But that was about that. Other than that, it was just some folklore. So I kept testing it and the results were always the same. And I said, this is very real. People have got to know about this. So I said, I'm going to go out to LA. So I went out to UCI and I went and I found my way into one of the sleep labs. And I said, we need to do a study. And this is what I've discovered. They looked at me and there's four sitting around the table. They looked at me and they said, do you expect us to believe that somebody's going to put a nail in the ground, tie a wire on somebody's toe, and they're going to sleep better? And I said, well, yes. He said, you're nuts. Get out here. You're crazy. Go away. But anyhow, we joked around a little bit after that. And then I began to realize they didn't really understand an electrical phenomena because it's invisible. Nobody thinks about it. And I certainly knew nothing about biology then, but that was 30 years ago. Today I'm dangerous. In order to do a study, I had to get a couple of the kids from UCLA to help me design the study, and I had to go do it myself because they wanted more evidence that what was going on. I ended up doing a study of 60 people, 30 of them grounded, 30 of them ungrounded, and we found significant results. Mainly, everybody slept better, had less pain, but they also reported things like TMJ went away, PMS issues disappeared. One of the ladies said to me, well, it can't be a cure-all. And I said, well, being ungrounded may be a causal. So I don't know about the cure-all. And so anyhow, that's kind of how it got started. Since that time, we've done 30 plus peer-reviewed published studies. We have hundreds of articles, review articles, everything you can think of. Everything combined suggests one thing. You can't have charge in a grounded object, grounded computer, grounded amplifier, grounded animal, or a grounded human. It just can't happen. That's what grounding is all about. The immune system was doing exactly what it was designed to do, but it didn't know that the human lost its ground, lost its source of free electrons to mop up and clean up and reduce these radicals before they can damage tissue. Put it in perspective, animals in the wild, cancer rarely exists, if ever, in the wild population. You have to contaminate their environment. You have to do something to screw up their environment. They've been here for eons of time. On the other hand, the animals who live indoors with their owners manifest the same health disorders as their owners. Diabetes, cardiovascular disease, 50% of them die from cancer, similar to their owners. We changed our environment. We are no longer naturally grounded. Our bodies are on fire. This is a modern phenomenon. It's only 65 years old that we really started disconnecting from the earth. We started moving indoors in the 50s. Television came along, we started carpeting the floors, and then we all put on leather sole or plastic soled shoes. And so over a period of just a few years, we disconnected from the earth. We lost our electrical ground. It'd be like me going into the head end of a cable system and unplugging all the grounds, and then all of a sudden you're going to have noise and static and chaos and bad pictures and lots of service calls. Earth maintains a negative charge. The word negative meaning no charge, and an excess of free electrons that can quickly, at the speed of light, in some cases, travel and reduce charge, like lightning, for instance. Boom. The Earth is electrical. It maintains a natural electrical charge. Earth can give up electrons freely or absorb electrons because the Earth is infinitely large, especially compared to a human body. Human body is infinitely small. When you stand barefoot on the earth, if your body is short of electrons, it will instantly begin absorbing electrons from the earth until it reaches a point where the earth and the body have the same electrical potential, meaning no charge difference. As long as you are barefoot on the earth, you can't have charge in your body. It's not possible. You'll still have oxidation, oxidative bursts, all those kind of things. That's natural, that's normal. But you won't have the collateral damage because the free electrons from the earth ground or mop up all of those excess radicals and prevent the immune system from going astray. Anytime you are not grounded, you are vulnerable to inflammation manifesting. That inflammation may start out very, very slow, but if you go chronically ungrounded, then all of a sudden the aches and pains start to increase. The number one thing you have to do is reduce the inflammation. And the only way you can do that is to have a blueberry drip or stand barefoot on the earth. In just 30 minutes, it's going to change how you feel, how you look. Your energy is going to come up, your pain is going to come down, and the immune system can then go to work, clean up the damage you created, and then eventually go back to maintaining health and restoring health.